My name is Kamieniak, and I'm an UX designer. Actually, I have like about 10 years of experience talking with technical people, with developers, and I'm also teaching interaction design at Academy of Fine Arts in Katowice. And I'm really passionate about creating useful and beautiful experiences, and I would really like to elevate the designers developers communication. That's a very important factor for me, and I think that we are going to make it. And I'm also very proud to be here. It's my first time at Øredev, and I find it very nice. This is my goal. I'm happy to speak here, and I'm curious about your goals. There are my friends from work. I have a team of UX designers and researchers. They are all girls. You can see them here. We also collaborate with developers and user research. This is my colleague making notes from the user research. And this is just presentation in school. So let's go to the point. Let's go to the presentation. I was really in the need to create it really user-centric. So I made like 5 in-depth interviews, like interviews with my fellow colleagues, developers, to find out what is really interesting for them in material design, what are their questions to designers, what they would like to ask and they don't know the answer. So basing on that, I made an agenda, and I made some research as well. And we are going to go through this point. First of all, we'll find out what is material design and what isn't. We'll talk a little bit broader about function in design and design in general. And we'll go through pros and cons of material. We'll find some communication tips. I would like to share some knowledge how to give really meaningful and effective feedback. And there will be also some questions and takeoffs and questions time after presentation. Of course, I prepared like a quick note from this speech, so I can share it with, and I can share the link with you after the speech. So you don't need to make any photos and any notes. Right now, there is a huge and really living discussion toward design. Actually, I find it really sad that designers are talking mostly to designers. They are on the dribble, they are on the Behance, just talking about cuteness, awesomeness, pretty fonts and details. But this is actually a small part of a design that's not that important for the digital products and people. You can find lots of inspirations, but they are purely visual. Like, they rarely even consider usability issues. They are just beautiful. I also have such sins on my behalf, so I'm not just using my finger, it's me, myself, I'm also guilty. So being here actually makes a difference because I can speak with you, and I would really like gather your feedback after the meeting if you would find any other questions or needs that weren't solved. I would be really happy to hear them. So, of course, I was researching very widely, and for sure, material design is not bad, and is not dead yet. is responsive. It's probably the most responsive visual design system ever. It's so light in visual methods that it's really easy to manage the flexibility of interface. I don't know, is it political choice or not? How do you think? I don't know. But it's not flat. This is the most important thing, that there are a lot of people that think that material design is just a trend. It is a trend, but it's a system, so this is very important to don't take it just the surface, just dig on it and find the sense. So material design is first of all the metaphor of paper. Paper is paper material. It's not paper, it's a special material. Visually it looks a little bit like paper, but it's not. It can transform, it has shadow, and it's really much more accessible to use shadows in the design and of the interface, because they give better affordances for the user. We really need metaphors in design still. It started like that. We really needed corridors, desktops, really simple, very realistic things to get along with the interface back then. This one is my age. And we needed beautiful interaction. We were all overwhelmed with skeuomorphism. That was actually such a strong trend that it was really difficult to not get into it. We are also very used to the idea of layers, of windows, of objects that are spatially underneath and hierarchical. So material is using very common, simple and beautiful metaphors to work it out. Material design is designed in an atomic way, because you can get to know their small atoms and bigger organisms. So this is the way of building design system that is actually the most convenient for designers and developers to work with it, to build with it. And it's also very good in case of sharing design knowledge and design patterns, and even like code snippets in a design project. But material design is not the only one visual language design system right now. I will show you some. This is the undesigned. It's very interesting if you are working on enterprise software, because there's a lot of tables, graphs, and complex data solved. It's a really nice reference. Do you have a design system at your project? Some of you, maybe? Yeah? Okay. So if your company is not using design system, probably is not design obsessed, because you can notice that all the big companies, or even not that big, that are obsessed with design, they even publish them, like openly. It's kind of their credo. You can find original fonts that were delivered for the brands. These are often kind of mixtures of brand guidelines with digital system, with voice and tone that has communication guidelines. Actually, right now there are a lot of people working with visuals, with communications, with media, and this kind of virtual book site that gathers all the info is really valuable when you have a lot of stakeholders, editors working on a project. And it's also a big trend. Why Google made material design? These are just my guesses. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing. I think that it's a great gift to the community of designers and developers, because it's a very interesting visual design system that makes our work better and simpler. And it's also a method to build and to win usability patterns on market. Not of them I like personally, but they are good. Do you think material design is functional? Whether yes, yeah. Okay, it's very functional, and it's really well designed. But we often, as I said in the beginning, we often see just a surface. We see colors with some shadows, and the whole digital product, you probably know this graph, there has a lot of information and work in beneath. So with functionalism, there is an interesting story, because I will use some architecture to make my point. It's a very good idea to find design inspiration in different areas. So I was looking at international style, like the architectural style popular in the beginning of 20th century. You will find Bauhaus school. It was really popular. You would find very simple ideas, very functional, very clear, without ornaments. Some of them were slightly inspired by nature or organic forms, but they were very simple. There was also Le Corbusier, which I personally like. I've been to France and I have a photo with Modular that was designed as a typical man. That was designed as a scale for the architecture he was designing. He was thinking about the spaces that are actually machines for living. So there was no like a vast space, very small kitchens or non-kitchens, because he thought that we don't need them. And in this unité d'habitation, in this unit, there was like a children garden at the top, so you could just took your kids into elevator, and they were at the children garden. So it was really bright idea, and there is a lot of beautiful functional ideas, and but it's like almost empty. It didn't succeed, this building. There are some copies in the Soviet bloc. These are my city, Katowice. A very similar building, not a very comfy one, very big, very gray. People didn't like it. And as you can imagine, functionalism was brought, but wasn't actually answering people's needs and emotions. We search for individualism, we search for relation, for social interactions, and this kind of buildings are not that good. As you can imagine, it's over right now. They say that the moment that modernism, as in Iran, functionalism was done, is actually the torn down of housing development made in US. It was the end of era, because US government created social housing, and it actually was completely fail. There were like racial problems, crimes, and there was also argument for US that interventionism of the country is not a good idea because it didn't succeed. Actually, Minoru Yamasaki was extremely awarded architect and author of World Trade Center, so we can say that very influential. Here you can see a little bit of postmodernism in architecture, when eclecticism is used, when there is science, fun, color, that the things start to entertain people instead of serve people only. I think it changed the way we were thinking. You probably know Dieter Rams, the guy that influenced Apple's first version of calculator. He was a very influential person of design and had really bright vision of his design work and of what should consist the good design. Innovative, it's very important to say it in here, but it's very important to work with innovative technologies, to find them, to solve them. For him, it wasn't only working with the newest ones, it was also searching for a good use of the technology. It's also the thing that we are also not thinking that much. It's about long-lasting and environmentally friendly. So these are things that in digital design sometimes we forget about. So I don't know if you know this design studio. It's very nice, and it's pure postmodernism in web design. You can literally find a lot of info here, but it's all messy and it's really difficult to use. But it's a statement and it evokes emotions. This is actually a site of very rich lady selling cars, and it's a real design. It works like that, and it's actually very awarded, and she's selling cars and leasing them very well. When you start to read this site in the details, it has a lot of small, well-designed copy. It's funny. It's not so bad in terms of usability. Maybe it's a little bit ugly, but right now we are working in an era of mixed feelings, and brutalism is actually one of the important trends in web design. Will we experiment? Will we design for fun, for experience? Not maybe the fastest one, but for a meaningful one. This is, for example, a scalable font that can be used in web projects. It's not that legible, but it's very beautiful. It's designed by David Jonathan Ross. It's not only one of interesting fonts for developers that he had designed. There are also fonts to use vertically and the color ones. So this is some kind of experiment and postmodernism in a design as well. And this is one of the most important sides of a UX design right now. It looks like 10 or 20 years ago, but to be honest, I read almost every article there because it's really loaded with important knowledge, and it's still, yes, and it has great summary that is extremely useful because some of these articles are really big and full of content, so it's very comfy, and it uses very old patterns, but still I think that being trend resistant might help us like when we design products in a way that they are not so ugly after a year. We don't need to rebrand them, redesign them. We just stick to the style more than to the fashion. This is actually one of the problems with material design, that it's right now much more a fashion than a design system itself. Like you would see every page for designers. It's material design, it's a trend, let's do it. I had a story that that actually was really surprising. A QA engineer from my company came to me and said, "Oh, I would like to write a blog post." And I go, "Oh, okay, great. How can I help you with that?" And she was like, "Oh, I would like to write about material design." And I was like, that's really strange. A technical person comes and says that material design is beautiful. that's strange, and wants to dig the topic, write about the topic. So I was open and I helped a little bit. But I started to dig more in material design. Material design actually combines function and some of the human touch. That's why we like it, and we find it beautiful, pleasant, and functional. And it's extremely functional. It's a machine for making interfaces. It's based on physics and based on our real experience. It's using very natural movements, kind of natural mixed sources of light. So this makes it pleasant and natural for the users. Also, in the new material, there is a freedom, something that was really missing and in the first version of material and was really hated. We can change shapes, we can use custom typography, we can find unique brand guidelines and just adapt design language to our needs. It's very simple with responsiveness, just generating, hiding some kind of content. It may look some kind of vast in the big interfaces like on a computer, but for me as a designer it's a very good point because there's lots of white space that I love and that's beautiful. And material, first of all, is a shortcut for a good design. We can take it and really save our time. But it won't solve our design process. We need to remember about discovery, getting into user needs, ideation, like the real brainstorming, design itself. We can't just take it because individualism and the brand expressions is always needed. So a little bit of customization in the material design is extremely important. And we need to test with user. Who of you have seen a user testing session? That's very good. How it was? Okay, I think that's very good that you've seen that because it's not so often. And this, of course, is an iterative process. So when you design, when you test, you repeat, and it never ends in an ideal world. So this is actually a photo from the user testing we're making and the fake credit card. It's very important when you create artifacts for prototypes for the testing to make it as real as possible. With user testing, it's like with exercising. It's difficult to start, and it's difficult to exercise regularly, and it's really a very important work to be done. What is very good in material design, it's the vertical rhythm. I was talking with developers a lot about that. They are really obsessed about mathematics in design, so material design is really well designed in that area, and it's solving that problems. And it's even solving the problems with baselines of the fonts and having like two grids, the bigger one and the smaller one for the smaller objects, but they are, as you see, 8 and 4. It means that they are actually matching to each other. So that's very important because when you design some kind of layers, drawers, and all the stuff, using that grid makes the fonts go in a proper place. You are never lost. The depth in the material design actually enhances accessibility and possibility to interact with the user. As you notice here, there is a clear hierarchy, clear organization of the interface made by colors and by depth. And it's what's important in the new material design. You don't have to follow it perfectly. If you don't want to have shadow in this header, you don't have to, because it's strong enough to work as a top layer. So you need to use your eyes to find out what works best. For sure, with material design, you will save a lot of time and money. Working with design system is always simplification of work and communication. And what is also important, if you want to get more knowledge, just read guidelines. Just read guidelines and ask yourself why. Research a little bit more, and you can actually learn really a lot of information about design itself. It is very popular. That's the problem with material design. And the problem is that it's much more popular than user testing and ethical design. This is what I found out lately. I think that we can change it. And right now we're going to be a little bit mean and talk about problems that material design has. First of all, it might be too popular, and it might lose popularity one day, and our interface will be a little bit passé, a little bit out of date. That's never good. And there are places where we create a small shadow mess. There is too many layers, there are text on them, they look grayish, they don't have the proper hierarchy, and we can't actually have like a really streamlined experience with this kind of interface. Especially it is difficult when you have like lots of objects that have shadow and whites on whites. Vibrant colors that actually make the text less legible, that change a lot, that animate, that consist illustrations, that often can be really difficult for our message. That's really funny because it's an all onboarding of Google Photos app. And one day I thought it was so beautiful, and then I found out that actually people hate onboardings. And they just want to get to the core value and use the app because it should be intuitive. So it's a historic thing. It doesn't look like this anymore. Maybe you've seen the presentation of Luke Wróblewski that was showing a redesign of this screen. What else? Mystery Meat navigation. Do you know mystery meat? Mystery meat is some kind of meat served in cafeterias in US that was so processed, so mashed up that it was impossible to know from which animal it was made. So in user experience, we coined the beautiful term mystery meat. I like this term because people know about things that can see. It's like we really, in the real world, we process a lot of information. We go to the restaurant, we see the name, we see the logo, or we see the style. We get to know what can we order. In a virtual world, it's much more difficult. When we just show a menu in a virtual world, we are actually not showing what can be inside. So, and every time when you think about hiding menu in a hamburger icon, think twice. If it's really needed, it's a good tactic. Of course, it's beautiful. It hides the mess. It makes interface clear and less cluttered, but it doesn't give cues for the user. Of course, we have also a donor menu, the second one, the dots, and I never know what's the difference. Okay, I know, but just joking. But I think users just don't care. What's the difference? And we can also find beautiful floating button that is very beautiful, and it's probably the worst button. Hello. Welcome. The worst button in the history of design, because it's very beautiful and it has plus on it, so you can literally put there everything. And this is what developers are doing and what designers are doing. It happened to me that I found an app that had like a whole menu and all the actions under this button. So it's really comfy because you can squeeze what you want, but it's also the button of a mystery meat, so you don't know what's under. Also, some kind of pushed simplicity is not good. When we work on design and we look for simplicity by like a process, research, and all the stuff, it's beautiful. But when we think about forms that need to fit something, it's not that good. It's actually an example from an Uber app that I'm waiting for my friend and I can't see the name, but I can see that I'm waiting. But the designer's ego is okay because it's one beautiful element, and it works like that. So it happens very often when we concentrate too much on form and too much on like this not real simplicity, that it's not a good pattern. This is a very nice example of another design system. It's very nice because it has some user type distribution, so you can moderate the content for different types of users. And I will go with some good advices how to work together better. And first of all, it's really important to see the design in the concept phase. Here you can see the Wednesday day of Google Design Sprint, where the concepts are shown to the broader public and people are voting, and it's a perfect time to talk about technical constraints, to talk about inspirations, to build on other ideas. And what I found out that it's very important to ask. Like, as a designer, it's really hard for me to hear I don't like it or it's ugly. And a lot of designers, even the good ones, have some kind of bad experiences with people's opinions. So it's the best way to stop the conversation, to kill the conversation. So it's better to ask why it's like that, why it's for whom it's designed, what are the aims. And when you ask, the things can be solved. Also, I would like to share with you the knowledge that makes your feedback heard, because sometimes it probably happened with you that you were giving feedback to designers and they are not reacting. Maybe it's a little bit work consuming, but it's a very good idea to write it down. Because when we give feedback, we usually give it in a natural, fluent way that is not organized. In this way, we usually mess the small things with the big things, and we can't actually accentuate the very important things. Very important was the first impression, and if we think it fits the user needs. And I think we should start with these two things, and the small additions like mistakes, things that are good and that are to keep, are also something you can write down and talk about with your designer. I think also that it's very good to practice like the feedback giving without putting too much emotions and opinions. I think that it's good to forget this sentence because it only annoys people. And did you actually took part in a design sprint? Some of you? Okay, a little bit less, but it's still good. And I think it's also a very nice idea because my experience with having technical people on the crowd in this kind of activity and design sprint, it's very good because they have very valuable input and point of view that is different and very important. When we design products, we should ask yourself a very important questions. And for me, there is one question that is the most important. It's a little bit not UX questions. It's, could I use this product myself? It's maybe a question that is anti-user experience because it's about me, but it works well for terms and conditions, and it works well for a business side of our project. It's a test of the small ethical design every day. And actually, a designer, Johanna Nissenbaum, a friend of mine, designed this artistic project. It's a terms of use printer for IoT devices. So I really like this kind of design. This is speculative design. There are tools to create futures, to create scenarios, to create talks about what is possible and how to act with it. It's a great toolkit, speculative design for technical people to experience a little bit more from the digital products. As we know, the question that's also very important is if it's good for long term and short term as well, because we do user testing, so we know that people like it, people understand it, they're able to use it, but it takes a little amount of time. But it's good to think a little bit about how it's going to influence the human in a longer perspective. Do you find importance of the project you work on as important? Or not really? It's important for you, the ethics behind the project you work for, or no? Okay. So I'll go. And this is my probably the favorite industrial designer, and he actually spent most of his life fighting and writing and talking about safety of people, creating super cheap cars without electricity for Africa, radios made from batteries, and he noticed the problem in the industrial era. Right now we are in a digital era. We are talking a lot about bioethics. It's really interesting. It's really interesting for me, but I think that we should a little bit we should look just on what we are doing, like a little bit closer, because we like to speculate about future, about possible things, but still just beside us, just what we are doing every day has probably the biggest impact, and there's a lot of things to think it up. And Papanek suggested industrial designers to create about 20% of their work to the public, to the social good. So this is something that we can also do to make digital world a little bit better. These are 3 books that I really like. This one will get some information about speculative design. The second one, very fast and lean, if you want to get to know a little bit more about user research, and it has very good examples. And my favorite one, a book about Victor Papanek, that was very idealistic man. And what can I say? I can say that I'm really happy that I had chance to speak. I hope that we are going to create better and well-designed products, that we are going to use material design. And I truly believe it's a little bit worn out, but it's going to stay with us for a longer time. And it's a very good language, and it's a design system. And I hope that design systems are a very good tool for designers and developers in creating better communication and better products. So thank you, and I will wait for questions.